Those who have seen The Wrath of Jeffrey Keaton seem to really enjoy it. But I, however, didn't find it all that satisfying. I felt there was too much story going on, with Jeff being resurrected to become a Wendigo, only for him to not do much for the entire audio drama. Jane only having the cursed hoodie on for a little bit, and having this strange plot with Marie Laveau and Isla Jack, who is related to Jeffrey Keaton somehow. So I'm here to give my version of events and tell you my version of how I think The Wrath of Jeff Keaton should have gone. I'm Harry Flea TV, and this is my version of The Wrath of Jeffrey Keaton. The story opens with an opening scene from the original film, but it doesn't flash back to Isla Jack the Ripper. I felt like having Isla Jack and Marie Laveau in the story felt really unnecessary to what it could have been. Yes, I know Isla Jack was a big part of Jeff Keaton, and so was Laveau, but even they felt like side villains along with Jeff. Like, Jeff felt like more of a side villain than Isla Jack and Laveau. But in my opinion, I just think the story could have gone differently with Jane having the cursed hoodie on. You'll see what I mean when I tell the story. So the scene plays out the original cut back at Dr. England's house when they're trying to calm Jane down while she has the hoodie on. But instead of being knocked out, Jane manages to kill Zack and escape through the window. I will not be referring to her as Jane Keaton. In fact, I'll be referring to her as Jane the Killer while she has the hoodie on. And yes, I know Zack didn't die in the original cut, but at that point, I felt like Zack was just really unnecessary to the story. I don't know, he just wasn't an interesting character. Like, there was no arc to him, aside from that one shower scene when he found some kind of symbol on his arm. But even that was kind of irrelevant since they never acknowledge it. So, Zack is going to be taken out of the story. Dr. England is still in shock at what had just happened. He runs to Toby's maid and says, "Oh dear God, look what she did to you." And we get a tender moment of Toby and Dr. England talking while Toby is resting. We pretty much get the same dialogue from the original audio drama where Dr. England and Toby are talking about Jeff possibly knowing about the cursed hoodie and Jane putting it on. We cut 2 days later. A woman in her early 20s is making dinner whilst a man who was about the same age is watching TV. The woman sits next to the man, and there's a news report of a goth girl in a white hoodie murdering Spokane civilians. The boy says, "I bet we can find that girl and put a stop to her, sis." The girl turns to her brother and says, "Brad, we've already dealt with one psychopath in a hoodie, we don't need to deal with another one." That's right, it's Brad and Jennifer. Since the house of Jeff the Killer, they found a job at an old diner and are living in a rundown flat. Jennifer sighs. "If I'm being honest, I think we should leave this town. I don't want any more murderers to try and kill us." Brad scoffs. "Well, we killed that Jeff guy, maybe we can defeat this goth chick copycat." Jennifer sighs and says, "Maybe. Anyways, I'm off to work. See you later. Make sure you lock the door." Brad nods and Jennifer turns to leave. Meanwhile, in the diner across town, Toby and Dr. England are sitting and drinking coffee, thinking about what to do next. Toby has taken off his mask and goggles, and has even taken off his hoodie and replaced it with a coat. He then says to Dr. England, "Hey Doc, I just want to apologize for not believing you about Zolgo and Jeff and that. I'll try to hear you out next time." "Hey, it's fine," Dr. England says, "but think about this next time. You literally used to work for a faceless entity in a tux, and had history with a ghost entity clown thing, so I'm surprised you didn't believe me about Jeff. Toby looked down in shame. I was scared, he said sadly. I was in denial that Jeff would return. Also, I was trying to protect Jane from the truth. Dr. England chuckled shortly. Yeah, I can tell you two have a special bond. Toby puts his face in his hands and groans. Ugh, this is all my fault. If I hadn't been such an arrogant prick and tried to deny your warning, Jane wouldn't be like this. I should have helped more. Suddenly, a waitress comes to take Toby's and Dr. England's order. The waitress is in fact Jennifer. Toby looks up at the waitress to order his food, and she says, "Wait, why do you look so familiar?" And observes him before saying, "Hey, I know, you're Toby Rogers." But before she can finish her sentence, Dr. England interrupts her by saying, "Let's not shout it out for the whole world to hear." He whispers in Jennifer's ear, explaining Toby's situation. Dr. England explains to Jennifer about Jane. It suddenly hits her. "Oh my god," Jennifer whispers. "What's that?" She then whispers loud enough for Toby and Dr. England to hear. "Was this Jane girl the same one in the white hoodie? The one my brother and I saw on the news?" Toby says nothing, but Dr. England grimaces sadly and says, "I'm afraid so. You see, Jane was an ally who fought alongside us to defeat the might of her brother Jeffrey and the Kandarian demon Zalgo. She must have been cursed by the hoodie. It must still have Zalgo's magic within." "Jeffrey?" Jennifer says in surprise. "You don't mean Jeffrey Keaton, the killer?" Both Toby and Dr. England nod solemnly. Jennifer is shocked at this and says, "Me and my brother fought Jeff years ago. She suddenly looks downcast. "Jeff killed our mother." Toby frowns and says, "I'm sorry for your loss, man. I know how it feels to lose someone close." Jennifer sighs and says, "Well, we gotta work together, I guess. We gotta take Jane down before she hurts anyone else." And Toby pulls a forlorn face. He knows he should take Jane down, but he doesn't want to hurt his friend. He'd already lost Jack, and he was still mourning over him. He's still watching the news. There are more news reports of Jane's murder spree. He mutters and says, "Fucking fangirls. Why would they even worship a serial killer who blew up this freaking town?" Suddenly there's a knock on the door. Brad opens the door, and to his shock he finds Jennifer with none other than Toby Rogers and Dr. England. Here we can have a scene where Brad is questioning everything, and Dr. England and Jennifer are trying to explain everything to him, while Toby is examining the place. Ed, still shocked, asks, "But how do we even beat this Jane character? Is she as bad as Jeff, or is she stronger?" Suddenly, Toby puts a hand on Brad's shoulder. "Look, Brad, isn't it? We can do this. If we bring Jane down together, nothing can stop us." He's still doubtful, so he asks how they would even beat a machete wielding sniper in a magical hoodie, and Dr. England clears his throat. "The only way we can beat fire is with fire. I know who can help us, but I warn you two." He looks at Brad and Jennifer and grimaces. "You won't like it." While Jeffrey Keaton is at the bottom of the well, rocking. We can get the same dialogue from the original cut, except this time, either Jack doesn't find Jeff, our four heroes do. They come through the tunnel to find Jeff, who's rocking there. Jeff looks at them and says, "Oh, well, if it isn't dear old Dr. England, Toby, and..." He's going to trail over to Brad and Jennifer. "You two?" Christ, it has been a while. You two have grown up, I see. So England steps forward and says, "Hello, Jeffrey. It's been a while." Jeff can immediately tell that they all want something from him, so he says, "Come on, Doc, spit it out. I know you didn't come just to pay me a visit." Dr. England sighs. "Fine. It's your sister. She's been cursed with your hoodie. We need your help, or at least some advice as to how to get the hoodie off." Jeff then suddenly lets out a wheezy laugh. "And you want my help? Sorry, but Jane's already fulfilled her purpose. I'm not about to ruin that." Toby takes a step forward and says, "Look at yourself, Jeff. You're a useless husk, a shell of your former self. Do something good for once. I've made mistakes, hurt the ones I cared about. I'm trying to fix that. You should do the same. Do something good for once in your fucking life." Suddenly, Jeff lets out another wheezy laugh. "Fine, but I warn you, you won't like what I'm about to hear." The four heroes brace themselves, and Jeff explains that in order to fight a killer, they'll need to become one themselves. He explains that the hoodie could be too powerful to remove, but that doesn't make the one wearing it immortal. Our four heroes are shocked to hear this, and they all fall silent. The silence is then broken by Toby, who says, "But surely there's got to be another way of saving her without..." He then falls silent again. "Look, you want to save the whole town, don't you?" Jeff questions. Toby and Dr. England look at each other and nod solemnly. "Then you gotta take risks. What Jane's going through is a fate worse than death. Hell, there's a part of me that wishes I was never resurrected by Zargo." Dr. England clears his throat and says, "Thank you, Jeffrey. I never thought I'd see a good side to you anymore." And he and the gang walk back through the tunnel. Here we can get a few scenes of the gang bonding with one another. Toby and Jennifer are talking about how each of them lost their family member, and Brad and Dr. England are talking about their past experiences with Jeff. Meanwhile, Jane Keaton is resting in someone else's home, tossing and turning in their empty bed. We can see in her mind that Jane Keaton is still in there somewhere, locked in a cage by her killer persona. Jane Keaton yells at the killer to let her out, but the killer explains that it's impossible to escape, and that for the rest of her life she'll replace Jeff and become the most feared killer in Spokane. Jane tries to escape from the cage, but then she wakes up from her dream. Here we can have a scene where Jane feels remorseful for all the people she's hurt, but then the killer takes over her again, and she creeps out the window to take another life. Meanwhile, the gang are resting in an old building. Toby is still thinking about what Jeff had said. "I can't kill Jane," he thought to himself. "It's just what Jeff would want. He enjoys pain. For a psychopath who was nearly beaten half to death by his father his whole life." Dr. England walks over and sits next to Toby. "What's wrong, son?" he asks. Toby sighs, and we can have a touching moment where he confesses his thoughts to Dr. England. "I just don't know what to do. I can't kill Jane, but it's the only way to save lives," he says. "But at the cost of my friend's life." I just don't know what to do anymore. Dr. England sighs and squeezes Toby's hand gently. Look, we can do this, alright? We can try and get the hoodie off of Jane, and then we can be a family again, he encourages. But it won't be easy. Dr. England then explains that the three of them have become like a family, and to him, Toby and Jane have sort of becoming children. Toby smiles, touched by Dr. England's words. We then get a scene where Brad and Jennifer are looking nervously out the window. Brad calls over to Toby and Dr. England to check out the scene, and when they do, they see that standing on the roof with a citizen held at her machete is Jane. The gang rush out of the building and spot Jane on the roof, cackling whilst holding someone hostage, her machete appearing to point at the hostage's neck. Then they rush up to the roof. Jane! Dr. England shouts. Jane turns around and Dr. England sees that she's holding a familiar-looking man by his collar. Dr. England recognizes the man from Jeff's school. It's Chris Mexon's friend Jack. Well, if it isn't the principal and the retard, the killer sneers. Toby takes a step forward and says, Jane, please, look at yourself. Look at what you've become. The killer chuckles and says, Snowflake's the one who killed many people for a faceless entity. Toby takes another step forward. Yeah, I've done terrible things too. But you know what? I changed because I knew you were more than just a Keaton, more than just a killer. I changed, and so can you. Toby then holds out his hand. Suddenly, the killer stabs the former bully and charges towards Toby, lunging forward to kick at him. Toby manages to dodge and he tackles the killer to the ground. He tries to restrain her, but she manages to kick him off and stand up. Suddenly, Jennifer grabs Jane in a headlock. Jane, stop! She shouts. Toby has told me about you. And you're not a monster. You're not like Jeff. But before she can finish her sentence, Jane breaks free and kicks Jennifer off the building. No! Brad cries. No more killing, Dr. England shouts and tries to hold Brad back. But in a fit of anger, Brad charges towards Jane and she quickly stabs him with her machete. Toby and Dr. England watch on in horror and Jane the killer cackles and kicks Brad to the ground. The killer turns around to look at the two men. And now for you two, she snarls. She lets out a guttural scream and charges towards Dr. England, but Toby tackles her to the ground and wraps one arm around her neck. Jane, please, listen to me, he pleads to her, but to no avail. The killer pulls away from Toby and wraps both her hands around his neck, strangling him. Toby tries to pull free, but the killer's grip is too strong. Suddenly, Dr. England pulls Jane off of Toby and helps him up. Dr. England asks Toby if he's alright, and Toby says that he's fine. Then Dr. England says, we can do this. Then suddenly, a blade bursts through Dr. England's chest. He was impaled by the killer's machete. Toby shouts, Doc, no! But Dr. England chokes on his own blood, and the last words that come out of him are, it's gonna be okay. Before Jane pulls the machete out of him and kicks Dr. England off the roof. Toby tried to grab Dr. England, but failed, and watching in horror as the doctor's lifeless body falls to the pavement. Tears well up in his eyes when he turns to the killer. Why? Is all he can say to her, as his body shakes in anger. Suddenly, the killer smirks, and this propels Toby to charge towards her and tackle her to the ground and start punching her. How could you? He shouts repeatedly, as the killer laughs. Meanwhile, in Jane's subconscious, Jane Keaton is still trying to break out of the killer's prison. She is just about to give up when suddenly a light shines upon her. Suddenly Jane can see a woman in a nursing outfit with long brown hair and a kind smile. "Hello, Jane," the woman says in a calm, kind voice. "Who are you?" Jane asks. The killer screeches and "She's nobody!" But the nurse smiles. "Well, I guess you can say I was afraid of Jeff back when he was still trapped in Ferguson's asylum. Don't give up hope, Jane. You can still save yourself and your friend. Try communicating with him through me." The nurse then places a hand on Jane's head, and she can suddenly see the outside world. Meanwhile, Toby is still punching the killer, but then Jane grabs his fist, coming back into consciousness. "Toby, it's okay, I'm here," she says sympathetically. This makes Toby stop in his tracks, and he thinks that there could still be hope, but then Jane says, "Toby, you have to kill me." Toby stares at her in horror. "What? No! I can't do that. Jane, I'm trying to save you." Suddenly the killer creeps back in and she kicks Toby off of him. Toby then stands back up. Then Jane comes back into focus. "Then do it. Save us. Look at what I've done to our friends. What we've done." She points at herself, indicating herself and the killer. "Please, Toby." Toby pulls out a hatchet, but he doesn't move. "But Jane, I love you," Toby tells her, trying to hold back tears. "You're like a sister to me." Suddenly the killer starts taunting Toby. "And what a great brother you turned out to be," replacing Lyra with a serial killer of all things. Toby takes a few steps forward and Jane starts communicating again. "Don't worry about me, Toby. You're like a brother to me too." Toby takes another few steps forward until he's face to face with Jane, who gives him a sad smile and says, "It's gonna be okay." Tears fall down Toby's cheeks. "But I've lost so many of my friends tonight. I don't want to lose you too." Jane just smiles sadly and wipes away the tears. "It'll be okay, Toby." Toby closes his eyes and contemplates, his grip on the hatchet getting tighter. He then lets out a choked, "Okay," before raising the hatchet above his head. He then lets out an agonizing cry of emotional pain before he slams the hatchet into Jane's forehead. "I'm sorry," he whimpers, and Jane's body falls to the floor. Toby can hear police sirens. He thinks about turning himself in. Then he thinks, what good will that do? Every good thing he tried to do had led to failure. Then he decides to turn himself into the only person he can think of, Slender Man. Now he believes that the only purpose he has left is to be a proxy. He goes back to square one. Toby goes back to the forest to meet Slender Man, and we pretty much get similar dialogue as we did in the original cut, only this time Toby's reasoning is different, and he didn't kill Marky and Hoodie this time, only because I thought there could be more that could be done with them. And that would be my version of the Wrath of Jeffrey Keaton. Now, since there was a Wrath Chapter 2, I might make a part 2 to this video that dives back into the relationship of Toby and Jeff, the relationship that they once had back in Needles and Smiles. Stay tuned for that whenever it comes out. I'm Harry Flea TV, and remember, you don't have to. And let me know what you guys thought of this new take of a video I decided to do, or this new take of the Wrath of Jeffrey Keaton. And I'll see you all next time.